Rescue is moving to recovery in Spain as emergency services search for bodies following this week's devastating floods. More than 200 people have now been confirmed dead in the Valencia region where the deluge hit. Dozens more are still missing. The Defence Minister says more bodies may still be trapped in vehicles caught in the flood. The tsunami-like scenes have drawn thousands of people from all over the country to help with the clean-up and to distribute aid to stranded residents.
Emergency workers search a flooded car park in Valencia for victims of the recent floods. Rescue work is turning into recovery efforts as the hopes of finding people trapped alive have dimmed. Above ground, firefighters are removing the cars that were tossed into waterways and piled up in the streets by the ferocious floodwaters. The extensive damage has brought daily life to a halt.
We haven't been through the worst part yet. Nothing can come through. No food, nothing. The only thing that comes are the rescue trucks that can maybe bring a bit of food, but you need to walk 15 to 20 kilometres to buy some bread.
There was no warning. I think in the end it was too much for everyone. It's true that they should have been warned, but in those circumstances, I don't think anyone could have done anything. It was something extraordinary, never seen before in mine or my parents' lifetime.
Experts say that climate change is to blame for heavy storms and flooding becoming more common. But they also point to the failures in the local warning system for not keeping residents in these high-risk areas in Valencia safe.
The fact that we didn't hear those warnings, we saw people on the ground saying they hadn't received the warnings in time. They were already neck deep in water when they got those alerts on their cell phones. That suggests something's gone very wrong there with the warning system.
Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez met with meteorological experts and emergency workers in the region to discuss the flood damage. As residents question if more could have been done to warn them.
Well, our correspondent Jan-Philipp Scholz brought me up to date from the outskirts of Valencia.
The rescue operations are still ongoing here. 500 additional soldiers arrived today, and they support the police, the firefighters, and the civil protection officers and other military units. And I have seen also a lot of volunteers coming in today. So many, in fact, that some authorities have already warned that this could overwhelm the damaged infrastructure, the streets and the bridges. And in some cases, this could actually do more harm than good. Authorities have also informed the public that the chances to still find survivors more than 2 days after the floods hit Valencia are very slim now, and that people really should follow still the instructions of the authorities, because actually the meteorological forecast says that more rain could be ahead in the coming days, not only in Valencia, but also in other parts of eastern and southern Spain.
That's Jan-Philipp Scholz in Valencia. Carola König is an associate professor in the Centre for Flood Risk and Resilience at Brunel University of London. Welcome to DW. Let's start with what might have gone wrong. In our report, we heard people criticising authorities for lack of warning about this disaster. But we do know the European Flood Awareness System did warn repeatedly about the adverse weather system over Central Europe. So did Spain ignore those warnings?
Obviously, in detailed investigations will need to happen in terms of what happens in the chain of command of those things. But it is quite clear one cornerstone of community resilience is that you have good communication channel. People need to be informed timely. It's been previously mentioned that people were only getting the alerts when they were already sitting in drowning cars. These warnings need to happen early. They need to go via the radio, via TV. We need mobile phone emergency services. And I think not to forget is also that we need appropriate siren warning systems, because not everybody will have maybe a mobile phone on them, but you need to alert your community in order to keep them safe.
OK, so those would be doubtless recommendations for the future. Is this now over, or should Spain be bracing for more heavy rains in the next few days?
The forecast says there will be continued rain. Maybe the brunt of it has been seen already. But I think we also need to look into the future. This is now not just once in a 200-year flood, and then it's over, and then we will be safe. The impact of climate change are significant. We will see more and more extreme weather in the future. And I think we need to get our communities ready. And that means that we're also providing training at community level. If you have a large building where a lot of people work, you practice when you have fire alerts to make sure that in the event a fire happens, that everybody knows what needs doing. At the community level, with the flooding situation, we are not doing this yet. But I think this is something where all communities need to work towards. People need to know what to do with their electricity in the event of a flooding. Do need to have emergency bags packed, ready to go, need to know where their next safe haven area is in case of very severe flooding.
And what about the rebuild? There's an area like Valencia which has seen these sorts of storms, although not on this magnitude. How should they rebuild?
Well, I think if we are rebuilding, we need to rebuild better than what was there. And that means that we are rebuilding and building in climate resilience, that we're building in resilience that can be progressed in case of weather becoming more and more severe. I mean, obviously, for example, a town like Tokyo has been building a huge underwater cathedral in order to be able to harvest these storm waters at short notice. These are very, very costly infrastructure projects, and not necessarily every town is able to do this. But you can do a lot of things on a smaller scale in order to build in resilience, both at the hard engineering side, but also with soft engineering measures. Those in tandem together would hopefully help that we are not seeing these kind of devastations that we have seen on the news today.
Thank you so much for joining us. Carola König from the Centre for Flood Risk and Resilience at Brunel, University of London.
All right, we're joined now by Henna Hundal from Stanford in California. She is a climate researcher and 3-time delegate to the UN Climate Change Conferences. Great to have you on DW News. Henna, what exactly is the connection between climate change and natural disasters of the scale that we're seeing in Spain?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Pablo. Unfortunately, around the world, we're seeing these extreme weather events really just devastate populations. And it really depends on the type of event if we want to say that climate change is producing more severity or more frequency of that event. So, for example, with heat waves, we're seeing more frequency, more severity, and a longer duration. With things like tropical cyclones, we're seeing more severity. Now, with regard to the floods in Spain, which have just been so devastating in the southern and eastern regions, I mean, more than 205 deaths, many left unaccounted for, your heart truly breaks for the local population. What we know is that, first of all, the Mediterranean Sea actually recorded its highest temperature since unrecorded history in August. So that region has been unfortunately prone to lots of droughts and heat waves. And as heat evaporates water, the warmer air holds more moisture. And so that in turn can lead to these torrential downpours.
Yeah, certainly devastating to see those images. Do you expect greater action at this year's UN Climate Change Conference, considering the sheer number of extreme events that we've been seeing?
Yeah, unfortunately, this year has just shattered climate record after climate record. I mean, I'm coming at you from the United States, where we just had serially destructive hurricanes, Hurricane Helene and Milton, that left hundreds of people dead, more than $53 billion in damages. We saw more than 1,000 people die this year at the Hajj in Mecca because of the extreme heat. So this year really has put climate change in full focus. I'm hoping that COP29 will kind of carry those stories forward and make sure that countries who come around and convene at the negotiating table remember just how devastating these events have been for populations all around the world.
How can we make our cities and communities more resilient to the worst effects of climate change?
Yeah, I think there are a number of ways. I'll highlight one in particular. So with the extreme heat that we've been having throughout this year, that has also been affecting the Mediterranean region as well, which is partly why a lot of residents were not prepared for these rains, because they've been dealing with heat and droughts. A lot of cities around the world have actually appointed chief heat officers. You've seen this happen in Los Angeles, Miami, Santiago, Chile, and the goal is really to highlight the local gaps in preparing the population to deal with that particular type of extreme weather event. And I think many cities across the world might need to do that kind of a stock take, depending on what type of events that they're more prone to. I think we, in addition, have to look at infrastructure. The European Environment Agency says that Europe is actually the fastest warming continent on the planet, very prone to the effects of climate change. And unfortunately, a lot of the infrastructure is just not resilient enough. 2 years ago, when there were heat waves in the United Kingdom, we saw roads actually buckling. And I think, unfortunately, that with the floods in Spain, we're seeing that lack of infrastructure resiliency coming into full play as well.
Yeah, certainly devastating to see the effects of it. Henna, great to have you on the show, and thanks for sharing all your expertise with us. Climate research, Henna Hundal, joining us from California tonight.
Thank you, Pablo. Appreciate it.